It's coming down to the wire, and Gerry has a tough decision to make. We are breaking down fantasy suites on The Golden Bachelor. Hey guys, it's Kayla Thompson, and welcome back to Shared News. I can't wait to dive into this really interesting episode of Fantasy Suites for Golden Bachelor. But before we get into it, make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future Bachelor content. So it is Fantasy Suites week, and Gerry is down to his final 2 in Costa Rica. He starts the episode off by saying that he is in fact in love with both Leslie and Theresa, and he's praying that this week clarity will come. Gerry and JP have a little catch-up conversation about everything, giving very much father and son, as Gerry says that people his age do in fact still knock boots, and giving JP a huge laugh. He tells him that Leslie is super playful, and when she told him she loved him, he shuddered in his chest, feeling all the feels. But with Theresa, he feels very warm and safe. She lost her spouse like he did, so they kind of understand each other in a super deep way. They just get each other. But he does tell Jesse that he's been holding back with Theresa for some reason, and he just wants to make sure it's the right moment to tell her he is in fact in love with her. The first fantasy suite of the week is Leslie. Gerry takes Leslie rappelling, not ziplining like she would have hoped. Leslie says she's definitely nervous as they're rappelling from 170 feet up down a waterfall. But her and Gerry do it together, and so it does seem less scary for her because he's by her side. She talks in the ITM about how it's been super hard to let her guard down in the past because she's been married twice before, but with Gerry, he makes it so much easier. She says he feels like home, and he's really helped her through this whole experience, this whole process of putting her guards down. And you can definitely see just even on this date how he really does make her feel safe. During the night portion of their date, Gerry says that he wants to make sure that the two of them are being unbiased because he feels like they both have rose-colored glasses on, and he just wants to make sure that they're both really in it for the long haul, for marriage, for forever together. So he tells Leslie that he feels like she hasn't really asked him the hard-hitting questions in a while and wonders if she's giving him some sort of a pass. Then she jokingly asks, well, when's the last time you had sex? And he actually does answer honestly, saying that it's been a really long time. And for Leslie, she says it's been about a year. Gerry brings up that he wants to talk about moving in and living together. What does that process look like? What are her thoughts about that? Leslie expresses that no, she wouldn't want to leave her family in Minneapolis, but she loves Gerry, and whatever it takes to figure it out, she wants to do that. And Gerry responds saying that that's awesome, and he just wants to make sure that they're both really in it until death do us part. And at the sound of that, Leslie gets incredibly emotional because this is uncharted waters for her, having been divorced twice before. She says, quote, "You're everything I want to do it, and I know you can help me through it. I know I can do it. It's not that I'm afraid of commitment, I just have never had that before." She mentions in the ITM that sometimes she wants to sabotage things that are good because she's afraid that it's not gonna be her in the end, or she's afraid she's gonna get hurt in the end. Which, although I feel for Leslie so much, is kind of my red flag with Leslie. That's been my problem the entire season with her, is I feel that tension from her, and I just hope it doesn't actually sabotage what her and Gerry could have in the future if he does decide to propose to her. And I also just have to say I appreciated Gerry for bringing this up in this conversation because I think it was clear that it needed to be brought to the surface for their relationship to really grow and deepen, and for them to kind of have this understanding and have this back and forth with each other about this topic. Gerry offers her the fantasy suite date card and the key, and they both accept and decide to go into the fantasy suite together. When they sit down, Gerry tells her he feels like she's the one. He wants her when he wakes up. He wants her when he goes to sleep. He doesn't want to be without her. And y'all, I said, now Gerry, why would you go ahead and do this right now? Why would you say this to this lady? Because if you don't pick her, she is going to be crushed. I mean, we saw it last week with Faith, right? Where this expression of love, this promise to her family. And then he turns around 2 days later and breaks up with her. It's very, very hurtful to go through. So that's why we see in, past Bachelor, Bachelorette seasons, you choose your words kind of carefully until you really, really know for sure at the end who it really is. So I'm a little concerned with Gerry letting the cat out of the bag that quickly, but we'll see what happens in the end. The morning after, the two of them have coffee and talk about how they did not get enough sleep last night. They say they stayed up till about 2:30 to 3 a.m. talking about everything. And Gerry had to let us know that it is none of our business what exactly went down in the fantasy suite, but he did get to know her so much more, and she really could still be the one. Leslie ends the whole fantasy suite date by saying she does feel incredibly confident in what her and Gerry have, but it's hard knowing that Theresa is still here. So as we go on to the Theresa fantasy suite date, Theresa meets Gerry for a horseback ride around the jungle, around Costa Rica, and this is a little awkward date for Gerry because he talks a lot in the ITM about how he is really in his head and he's really comparing Leslie and Theresa, and he's not really being as present. Theresa definitely catches on and mentions in the ITM that Gerry is being very quiet. She seems to understand that he has a lot going on and he is in his head, and she gets that. And Gerry does get honest with her about how he doesn't really know how to sort all of this out, having these two important dates with these two important women to him back to back. Theresa definitely empathizes with him and decides to just reassure him of her feelings for him. And then Gerry says something very, very interesting in the ITM. And I actually don't know what to make of it quite yet. He says, Theresa is the perfect woman. Like, what is wrong with me? Because I'm sitting here on this date and I can't help but think, quote, what's Leslie doing right now? Now, hear me out, y'all. I can't tell if this is assurance that it's Leslie in the end, or if it's a telltale sign that it actually could still be Theresa that he picks in the end, because this is a very heavy-handed edit in my opinion. I think they're making it either insanely obvious that it's Leslie because of what he's saying and what they're allowing to show him say regarding this Theresa date. It feels really awkward the way they're editing it, super quiet, or because of that, they're trying to throw us off in the fact that he does actually choose Theresa in the end. Because listen, last week, like I said earlier, with Faith, we were all shocked by his decision. So I don't know, I'm kind of like in between, but you guys let me know what you think in the comments. During the night portion of their date, Gerry wants to seriously focus on Theresa and really compartmentalize. He wants to see if him and Theresa have maybe maxed out their connection, because he expressed that he feels like they aren't really growing as much as he would like them to, but he really wants to stay open and make sure he's not missing anything. At the dinner table, he brings up their connected experiences in losing a spouse, and he asks her what exactly she does for her career, which I was actually surprised that he didn't know more about up until this point. But she tells him about her job as a day trader, and then at one point her late husband needing more income for insurance, I believe, and she applied for the job at a company she was working for and got the job amongst a lot of like young people straight out of college with a lot of these degrees. And she said that, yeah, if she finds the right man that gives her a reason to stop working, she will, but she really loves her job. She's really proud of the accomplishments that she's made in her career. And Gerry was definitely impressed by her. You can definitely see his eyes kind of light up, and he's very surprised at hearing just all of this about Theresa. I think he saw a different side of Theresa that he'd never really seen before. Then he asked her why she decided to come on the show, and she said she got to a point where she just kind of gave up on love. But when her daughter sent her the application for Golden Bachelor, somehow she just felt like it was fate. Like when she saw Gerry, she felt like it was destiny for her to meet him. And hey, maybe she's right. I mean, she's at final 2. She tells Gerry she has not been with anyone since her husband, so whatever happens in the fantasy suites, it means a lot to her. So the two do decide to go into the fantasy suite together, and I think that getting a lot more insight on Theresa during this date really helped their connection and really helped Gerry really get there in his head with Theresa. When they wake up the next morning, it seems that they definitely had an amazing night. Gerry says it feels like he woke up to the rest of his life. They seem to understand each other on a fundamental level. Theresa tells Gerry she is crazy about him and loves him. And he says, you know how I feel about you. That's the beauty of it. You know exactly how I feel. And he concludes by saying in the ITM that he did tell her in private that he is in love with her. And when he told her, he was elated. The episode rounds off with cutting back to Leslie pondering on what could be happening next for her and Gerry. Either an engagement, or him deciding to choose Theresa and the two of them breaking up. Meanwhile, Theresa is feeling very confident and says that if Gerry gets on a knee and asks her to marry him, there's no way she's not saying yes. Gerry recaps his comparative feelings for the two women, and it just seems so close, but he does say he's running out of time. He can't put it off any longer, but he thinks he's made his decision. So that wraps up this week's episode breakdown of The Golden Bachelor Fantasy Suites edition. We do have a preview breakdown for the next week or 2 weeks from now for the finale on our channel. So go ahead and make sure you check that out right now. Also, don't forget to let me know in the comments your predictions on what could be happening next, who Gerry will choose. And don't forget before you go to give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload from us. Once again, I'm Kayla Thompson. You can follow me on Instagram or on TikTok. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.